carry. Now, CMS's job is to pay the bills. We focused on improving reimbursement models. We've done all kinds of innovative things under Abe Sutton's leadership at CMMI. We're working with the private sector. A good example of that is just on Monday, one of the leading pharmacy benefits management companies, the middleman company of this country, announced after discussions with us that they will voluntarily change their business model. If you didn't see this news, it is big. As Secretary Kennedy tweeted out on it, this is allowing this industry to transform itself from a rebate-based system where you hide the ball to one of ultimate transparency where everyone's going to see, including employers, who will no longer be able to hide behind PBMs as they sometimes allow extra funds to be channeled back to them through the rebate system. Now everyone's going to know what the numbers are, and to make sure that's true, Trump RX is going to publish the numbers of all the medications and their pricing, including the generics and biosimilar competitors, so individuals can make the right choice for them and will have options. The power to convene of this agency has been shown in other areas as well. I won't go through the entire list, but it has been remarkably effective. But it doesn't work unless we have the brave actions of the FDA under the commissioner's leadership to go out there and put real drugs in the hands of real doctors taking care of real patients. The increased transparency is going to make a huge difference, but I have 3 asks. And I ask this on behalf of CMS, but I think it applies to the entire agency. First, I'm asking patients right now to push for the medications you think make sense for you, using the interchangeability options that the commissioner is offering today. You have the ability to ask, why can't I get a cheaper biosimilar medication if it's just as good as the biologic that I've been paying a lot of money for or my insurance company's been paying for? Second big ask, I'm asking plans, insurance plans, to consider thoughtful design changes to allow low-cost biosimilars to be more accessible to their patients. There have been historically reasons, including the rebate model, why that hasn't been allowed or endorsed or supported. We don't want money paid on the side to determine whether a plan is made available to the employees of a company. We're not going to allow it in Medicare anymore. And the third big ask is to governors. If you can hear my voice now, please listen carefully. Medicaid money spent on these biosimilars will dramatically reduce the cost that states have to shoulder for Medicaid. That allows Medicaid to exist healthfully with access to all the medications that can be life-saving and life-changing, at the same time not crowd out education and other social services. Take advantage of the work done in Washington to allow your state capital to push for the bountiful access to Medicaid-funded drugs at the right price. God bless you all.
Awesome.
All right, we'll take questions from the press. Please keep your questions to what we're here talking about today. And also, if you can give your outlet, first name and last name.
Thank you. Zach Brennan with Endpoints News. So you offered the example of Humira, where we now see 10 biosimilar competitors, some priced at more than 80% off, and yet AbbVie still controls the vast majority of the market. What are you going to do for specific cases like that, where we see an influx of biosimilars, and yet they're still not gaining traction on the market? And then on interchangeability, can you say anything? I know the FDA has already approved biosimilars and as interchangeable without running the switching studies. What is new that's coming out today?
Yeah, first of all, there have been waivers of those switching studies that have been granted by the FDA. Now we're going to issue clear final guidance that those are not required. But the uncertainty makes it difficult for drug developers. As you know, Zach, with capital markets, they want predictability. And so knowing that now they can invest in a biosimilars development and have a time frame of coming to market from being at the drawing board to actually coming to market of now 2.5 to 5 years instead of 5 to 8 years. And we think we can also shave off some of the time that it takes for the FDA to approve biosimilars. We've identified ways that we can streamline that process as we are with other drugs. So you're correct in that some of those waivers have been issued, so we are going to make it very clear now and offer clear guidance. With Humira, the Humira example that you described, let's be honest about what's going on sometimes. The branded biologic manufacturer is paying the PBM to make sure that biosimilars are not added to that formulary. We're calling for increased transparency. You can see we talk every day. We talk all the time. This is a top priority for Dr. Oz to increase transparency and to make biosimilars a priority. And so he's asking many of the stakeholder groups that he has access to take a look at biosimilars. That includes Medicare Advantage plans, it includes Medicaid plans, it includes Medicare Part B and D. Biosimilars are in both parts. So I think, you know, we're not going to sugarcoat things. We're going to be very honest about what we see in the marketplace. And I think you're identifying something that we need to call out. Now, you can come up with protectionist strategies that try to regulate bad behavior. We can do that. We can talk about the merits of that. Or we can create more intense competition and let the market forces do some of that. So when Humira had its biosimilar come out 7 years later, it should be about 2 years. Or if the biosimilar starts in development earlier, like it does in Europe, maybe 1 year or half a year. But when you have that gap, it allows you know, a longer period of no competition. So we want to see more competition, and we want to see more innovation both.
Hi, Emily Kopp with the Daily Caller. This is for Dr. McCary. You said that FDA wanted to do this before now. Why didn't it happen? What forces were at play there? And to follow up on Zach's question, my recollection of the Trump RX executive order is that it proposed FTC action, perhaps, if they didn't come to the table. Some of the protectionist strategies you're talking about, could that see FTC action also?
Thanks. Well, first of all, at the FDA, there are great ideas that just have not gotten daylight. Take, for example, our work on removing the 9 petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply. They've been talking about that for 35 years. They had a citizens petition, and 2 business days before this new administration, they took action on one of them. Well, within weeks, we took action on all 9. So there are great ideas that just have not gotten daylight at the FDA, and this is one of them. People have seen the mired bureaucracy that has stalled biosimilars. And so, you know, we spend a lot of time listening to people on the front lines, asking them, what big ideas do you have and what we can do that's meaningful, that has an impact? And so we've announced a ton of these reforms, reducing animal testing requirements. I'm talking about that for 20 years. Now we've got good computational modeling, and we have our roadmap public, and we're going to make another announcement on animal testing requirement elimination probably next week. On the Trump RX is genius because you can bypass healthcare's middlemen. If you like healthcare's middlemen marking up the price of drugs and taking kickbacks from the manufacturers, use the current system. But if you want another option to shop for a price to see if that price is better, that's what Trump RX is for. It allows direct purchasing.
Thanks. David Lim with Politico. I wanted to, you mentioned that this final guidance is coming soon. Can you put a timeline on that? And then secondly, I wanted to ask about the role of Congress. Interchangeability obviously is in statute. Could you talk about whether you think that this move requires them to take any action to prevent litigation risk from biopharmaceutical companies?
First, on the final guidance, I would say 3 to 6 months. On the interchangeability, it's very complicated because we have the opportunity at the FDA to designate a biosimilar as interchangeable. We're saying basically we think all biosimilars should be interchangeable. And then states have their own rules on whether or not patients need to be consented or not for substitution. So we're planting a flag saying we want interchangeability, we promote it, we encourage it. And I would love it if Congress solidified this in law, but we're not going to wait for them. Thank you.
Hi, Paige Cunningham, Washington Post. This question is for Secretary Kennedy. The president has called for breaking up the MMR vaccine into 3 separate shots. I'm wondering, are you going to be...
Speak up a little, please.
Yeah, the president has asked to break up the MMR vaccine into 3 separate shots. Is that something you're going to direct ACIP to consider or take action on?
We're looking at the feasibility of that now.
Can you say anything more on that?
Daniel Payne with STAT. You're saying here that Daniel Payne with STAT. You're saying here that you want to reduce the evidence that's required to get biosimilars in the market, but the administration has argued again and again that there isn't enough evidence for vaccines, which are biosimilars. Can you help me understand why more evidence is needed for some things and other things you want less evidence?
So can you just repeat that? You said that. Can you speak up a little?
Of course. In this announcement, you're saying that biosimilars, you want to reduce the evidence needed for them to come to market. But previously, the administration has said that vaccines and other biosimilars, there's not enough evidence for them to be on the market in the first place. You suggest that you need more evidence. Can you help explain the differential there?
Well, with the long chain molecules like biosimilars, the brand drug has been thoroughly tested. It's been safety tested, it's been efficacy tested, it's been proven. But what we're saying now, and we're going to implement the same procedure that is used for small molecule drugs, which is if the active ingredient works, if it's been proven safe, if it's been proven efficacious, then you ought to be able to get on the market right away, the same as small molecule. With vaccines, the issue is very different because none of the vaccines currently recommended for children, with one exception, the COVID vaccine, has ever been tested in pre-licensing trials for safety in a randomized placebo-controlled trial. So the starting point is very, very different with vaccines than it is for biologics.
Thank you very much. Arthur Jones II with ABC News. Can you just talk about, Secretary Kennedy, the amount or the significance this announcement will have on struggling American families, as you mentioned at the top of this? And secondly, I've spoken to a number of Republican senators actually about the linkage between pregnant mothers using Tylenol and this risk of autism or other health disorders in unborn children. And one prominent senator told me that the evidence there is weak and there's no relationship. Can you respond to that?
For Tylenol?
For Tylenol.
Okay, on your first question, I mean, there's a good example that we worked on recently. We recently put together an agreement in South Carolina and now some other states, the private insurers and for Medicaid and Medicare to pay for sickle cell anemia treatment. The cost of that treatment is $1 million. It cures sickle cell anemia, but it's $1 million. If we could get a brand name drug, I mean, if we can get a generic drug, a biosimilar that does the exact same thing for a fraction of the cost, we can make that treatment available in every state. It is, right now, it is barely economic for the insurance companies because they think that maybe the treatment, the long-term treatment of somebody with sickle cell anemia is going to cost more than that $1 million. It's right on the borderline. So if we could cut that in half, it would be a no-brainer for every single state to adopt it. With Tylenol, we've all said from the beginning that the causative association between Tylenol given in pregnancy and the perinatal periods is not sufficient to say it definitely caused autism, but it is very suggestive. And it's suggestive in animal studies and core blood studies and observational studies from nation to nation. And so there should be a cautious approach to it. And that's why our message to patients, to mothers, to people who are pregnant, to the mothers of young children is consult your physician. And we have asked physicians to minimize the use to when it's absolutely necessary.
Martin Schwartz with Scripps News. Thanks for doing this. You mentioned at the top that you want medications to be affordable, effective, and safe for Americans. We're speaking today on the day that window shopping began in the Affordable Care Act program on those marketplaces, and that shows that unless those tax credits are extended, those subsidies, the average plan will increase for Americans by somewhere around 115%. Do you believe that Congress should extend those subsidies so that most Americans do not receive significant increases in their premiums?
Where'd you get that 115% number from?
Kaiser Family Foundation.
They retracted that. That data was run inappropriately. They changed the messaging on it. Go back and look at the website. Here's the truth. The window shopping is already revealing that the average American is going to pay who's on the ACA between 100 and 400% of poverty level, is going to pay $50 total next year. It's going to be $13 more than this year. So there can be a lot of hair pulling and scratching and mudslinging, but the fundamental reality for most Americans is that although it is an increase in spend, that's not the big issue. The big issue is the fundamental flaws within the ACA as they were created 15 years ago. We want government reopened so that we have people working, running the numbers, trying to help experts, actuarials, insurance company experts, to try to figure out more holistic ways of dealing with the bigger challenges that we face in America with increasing costs, which I don't think the enhanced premium tax subsidies, which were created for COVID, designed for COVID, they were short-term initially for a very, just a year, then extended until this year just to get through COVID. And I think we all agree that COVID has passed. So therefore, COVID era subsidies should also pass.
Announcing window shopping. You noted that in 2026, nearly 60% of eligible re-enrollees will have a plan, but in their chosen category at or below 50% after those tax credits. That's down from 83% in 2025. So that's a pretty significant number of Americans who will not be at that $50 a month range. Are you concerned about those Americans being able to afford their premium payments?
I'm always concerned about Americans being able to afford payments. The question then becomes, what's the best way to fix the problem? The ACA promised many things that just were not delivered on. And I don't know why $50 is the magic number. I picked that, by the way, because that's historically the number that's been thrown out there. Half the people on the ACA today, listen carefully, filed no claims last year. None, zero. So I have to ask myself, you should be as well, if I had insurance, why would I never use it? The concern that has been raised is that a large number of the 12 million people who never used their insurance last year may not legitimately have the insurance, know they have the insurance, want to have the insurance. So we have many bigger problems, and to fix the issues, we have to have Congress and this agency, CMS, but the entire HHS staff back at work. You can't do that if we're furloughed because of, I think, partisan bickering in Congress.
Dr. Mehmet Oz, qui t'a répondre une question journaliste, c'est un administrateur dans le département qui a avec question santé en dedans pays les États-Unis. Mesdames, Mesdemoiselles, Messieurs, bien le bonsoir, bienvenue à bord PSTARS Radio et Télévision. Nous avons suivi une partie dans la présentation édition Info 13 ans sur le réseau pour la PSTARS, côté que gagnant responsable qui t'a fourni des détails autour de activités y a mené pour capable réduire et nous avons dit prix moun capable payer pour healthcare ici aux États-Unis d'Amérique. Ça nous les premièrement médicaments que moun apprend ou bien services que y a pu acheter également. Tout ça fait partie de projet que monsieur souhaite présenter là, plan que vous gagnez pour combattre cherté dans question des affaires santé ici aux États-Unis. Par la assurance que moun acheté qui vendent au prix l'or dans les derniers jours, surtout à cause chef l'État ou bien administration qui a annoncé opposition à la question healthcare qui portait nos anciens présidents Obamacare que tu travaillé pour essayer de retirer le système ça parce que pas de danser collé ensemble avec lui, gagner tout subsidisant ou bien subvention bon côté l'État qui t'a privé dans boutli et que République n'a pas décidé de renouveler comme des faits du moment on a parlé là c'est négocié dans discussion entre démocrates et républicains sous question budget national là puisque républicains yo te capable retirer une série de l'argent qui était alloué à question médicale ensemble avec Medicare. Yo te retiré l'argent dans bouche ancien militaire vétéran tout dans façon que y a traité yo qui côté que yo pralé dans docteur d'après information yo. N'a faut connaître jeudi mais ensemble avec M. Kennedy Junior Bobby, yo te rencontré ensemble avec la presse et jusqu'à maintenant pas trop longtemps de ça que M. fin expliqué position. Maintenant, Bernie Sanders, un sénateur qui votait ensemble avec des démocrates, lui a positionné sous problème qui gagne pour financer SNAP ensemble avec FoodStamp et puis l'autre source de financement que parents ont gagné moun qui fait accoucher aux mesdames yo pour petit moun yo pour petit que fait faire ensemble avec moun qui était qu'on a bénéficié dans affaires food ben eux même qui recevoir aide de l'État et yo transformer monnaie yo capable bail population manger pour le manger en écouter.
Maybe there is a political gain in that. Let there be no mistake. And that is what this statement is about. This is on the U.S. Department of Agriculture website until very recently. The president is legally obligated to use this emergency fund, and up until last week, his administration was preparing to do that. We are here today to send a very loud and a very clear message to President Trump. Obey the law. I know that's a hard concept for the president, but obey the law. Do what Congress mandated you do. Do not let children in America and their parents and grandchildren go hungry. Do not go down as the first president in history to manufacture a hunger crisis in the richest country on earth. Release these funds. Now, the good news is there are at least 11 Republicans in the Senate who are supporting a bipartisan bill to ensure that no one in America goes without the nutrition assistance they need during the shutdown. And that is very good news, and I thank those 11 Republicans. Every Democrat supports that bill as well. That bill, I say to Senator Thune, when you have 11 Republicans and every member of the Democratic caucus on support, that bill should get to the floor immediately. No child in this country should be forced to go hungry. With that, let me introduce Senator Merkley.
So the President of the United States has a new MAHA agenda. Instead of Make America Healthy Again, it's the Make America Hungry agenda. It's weaponizing food, using food as a weapon against America's most vulnerable families. In my state of Oregon, you're talking about 210,000 children. You're talking about 130,000 seniors. All told, over 700,000 people going without food. Congress said this should never happen. So we created a contingency fund. That fund has $5 billion in it. We created an interchange power so the president can actually use tariff funds to supplement that $5 billion. And here's the President of the United States last month acknowledging that that's the intent of Congress, that this funds exist, people will not go hungry. And now here's the President today saying, I am going to attack the health and welfare of America's most vulnerable families as a negotiating tactic. It reminds me of his strategy over immigration, saying we're going to separate children from their parents. We'll use children as a weapon. Well, here it is once again, and it's absolutely unacceptable. So the president has the power to address this, and a group of attorney generals are saying, because it's the law, we're going to sue to say the president has to follow the law. Some 26 attorney generals are suing, saying, President, follow the law. We're saying, follow the law. His Republican colleagues, 11 in the Senate, are saying it matters that children not go hungry. You know, when children don't have food, they also don't learn. So it's not just an attack on their ability to have basic nutrition for a month. And who really, who in the United States says, I'm going to make sure children go hungry for a month as a political tactic? Who says that? Except this president in this time. It's unethical, it's immoral,
It's illegal, and we're here to say, hell no, that Democrats and Republicans must join together and tell the president this cannot happen here, not in our nation, not against our children, not against our vulnerable families.
Senator Markey?
Thank you, and thank you for calling this, Bernie. November 1st is just 3 days away. That's the day when SNAP benefits stop being added to EBT cards for 40 million Americans because Trump and MAGA Republicans refuse to use a $5.5 billion emergency fund to make sure families get to eat. Some of those families are already having to ration what's left on their cards because they fear nothing is coming on November 1st. That's the same day they have to pay rent. Maybe the same day they have to pay their electricity bill or refill grandma's prescription. It's 3 days until millions of families across the country wake up unable to stock the pantry. 3 days until thousands of military families and veterans will see their food aid disappear. It's the richest country in the world. When a CEO billionaire just got $1 trillion in tax breaks, Trump and his Republican allies in Congress will allow babies to go hungry. Trump just found $40 billion to bail out Argentina to get the new president elected, but he can't find enough to feed struggling American families. It is a national disgrace. In Massachusetts, 1.1 million people will struggle to put food on their tables starting Saturday. That's 1 in 6 people in our state. 1 in 3 SNAP recipients in Massachusetts is a child. At the Stop and Shop in Malden, 3 blocks from my house, right now it's $4.29 for a gallon of store brand whole milk. It's $7.55 for 1 pound of store brand ground beef. It's $4.99 for a dozen store brand large white eggs. And all a SNAP recipient gets is $6 to $7 a day. That's it. And they're going to cut that off. In New Bedford, it is half of all households are on SNAP. In Chelsea, 1 in 4 people receive SNAP benefits. And that's people who have real needs that have to be met for their families. So there's no reason a baby should cry and want a food. There's no reason a mother or father should have to experience the heartbreak of watching their daughter or son struggle to focus on homework because they missed a meal. Trump's cruel cuts are also straining the food banks. The pantries are already struggling to feed and meet the needs of hungry residents, a reality that was quite clear when I met with food bank leaders and anti-hunger organizers at Project Bread in East Boston on Friday. This moment isn't just an economic failure. This isn't just a civic failure. This is an utter moral failure for the Trump administration and MAGA Republicans. The president could choose to end this crisis today with just 1 vote. Republicans could restore health care and food assistance for millions of families across our country and reopen the government, just 1 vote. But the president can use his emergency power to solve the health care problems that are going to be created by the food crisis. And he can do it right now, and he should do it. Thank you.
Sénateur et démocrate qui réunit bon côté Bernie Sanders pour faire des critiques pour proposer ou bien présenter situation dans le cadre de conflits qui mettait face à républicains pour arriver débloquer le gouvernement américain qui bloqué depuis environ 29 jours puisque nous avons 28 jours, 13 heures depuis que ça a été arrivé. Américains n'ont pas arrivé d'accord pour voter un budget qui est un chef d'État pour signature. Et bien ça veut dire que le gouvernement a fonctionné aucune goutte dans ce sens militaire qui dit qu'il n'a pas payé d'après Donald Trump parce qu'il a gagné l'argent. Il dit qu'il n'a pas gagné cependant il a l'argent côté que il veut bailler une équipe de qui vivent au Canada. Côté que gagné situation healthcare que démocrate dit a défendre et bien gagné plan assurance qui capable monter bien haut yo pas entendre pour quitter le non palais royal là dans palais présidentiel alors côté que chef d'État américain lui-même l'a viré tout le temps et dans ce sens que l'a viré il gagné sanitaire et pour lui réagir par rapport à position premier ministre British ensemble avec président côté que tu as pu parler des relations États-Unis ensemble avec Grande-Bretagne pays non yo dans zone Europe là même et bien la Russie menace sérieusement la Russie fait comprendre c'est jouer qui était d'ailleurs qui t'a venu attaquer c'est de ça yo t'a que ça que lui-même li peser et demander pour qu'on yon pour essayer pas marcher pour pas ouvrir non dans zone dans ça qui concerne et dans ça qui concerne local là. Donc monsieur pendant qu'il a parlé, il fait comprendre que c'est pour yo capable continuer de défendre la population parce que si on pas défendre li pas besoin rien du tout. Après ça parlementaire on fait comme on a dit que nous après presque 29 jours de gouvernement li fermé gagné est tombé à qui fait son série de pays son série de son quantité individu son dit il y a un groupe également qui ont même senti que yo affecté par problème si la rebranché réseau à PSTARS FM radio et télévision n'a toujours là pour nous informer nous toujours rester dans l'hôpital pour nous présenter dans le devant tournant nous charger fusil d'épaule pour capable aller dans bataille avec ennemi rebranché réseau